What is going on, all you Minties? This is the Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition. And there's a reason why there's stacks of Dark Horse books. That's right. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 Dark Horse collected editions. So, please stay tuned. And welcome back, all you Minties. Now, before I get started, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you haven't subscribed yet, we put out videos like this every day. And proper shout-outs. Thank you all for suggesting this, because I've taken suggestions from a lot of you all, and now I'm going to start giving proper shout-outs. And if you've suggested this in the past, and I haven't given you a shout-out, I'm sorry. I'm going to start capturing them from now on. So, the top 10 Dark Horse graphic novels, or my top 10. One of the things that you will not see on this list is manga. You all know damn well, if you've been watching this channel, that I would have put Berserk as the #1 spot on this list. However, manga deserves its own list, so I'm going to do my top 20 manga list, as some of y'all want to see. That will be for another episode. So, one other thing is some of these have been licensed by another publishing company. So that means that Dark Horse doesn't own the rights anymore. But to me, these are the definitive way to own them in collected edition. So that's why they made it on this list. So, thank you all for watching, and I would love to know what your list is, so leave those comments down below. If you just have 5, 3, 10, whatever you have, leave those comments down below. You know, I love interacting with you all. And of course, the other thing to remember is that this is just my list. My list is going to vary from yours or anybody else's. I mean, I'd be surprised if all 10 of mine are on your list as well. And that's what makes this world so beautiful, is everybody has a difference of opinion, and we all can still get along. So, keep that in mind. And one last reminder that this is not a countdown. There's no particular order to these. This is just the top, my favorite collected editions from Dark Horse. So we're kicking it off with Hellboy. This is the library edition. It's been available in trade paperback. There's an omnibus edition, but there's soft covers. But this is Mike Mignola's Hellboy. We've talked about it on Old Reader, New Reader, and I'll be showcasing some of the artwork here on the video too. But just look at this high contrast art and the amount of world building that he does. That all started with this book, this silly little idea of a little boy that escaped from hell and is raised by a German scientist, and then other people come into his life. He is part of the BPRD, but this is where it all begins, and there's so much myth that goes into this, not just in the overall arcs, but also in just the particular mini stories that show up within these books. And I will say, it might take you until volume 2 before you learn to appreciate how great this is, because it takes a while for him to get his foot in the door, if you will. But in the myths that I'm talking about, they're from all over the world. They're not just myths from Japan, myths from Germany and Russia and South America. Oh, it's a wonderful story with phenomenal artwork. And of course, some of these you've already seen in my top 20 non-superhero comic books, but you know that this belongs here. This is Usagi Yojimbo by Stan Sakai. And I think this is the best jumping on point for new readers, because this is the saga, and I realized that this damn book is rare and out of print, but there is a softcover edition to this. And I also realized that IDW now holds the license, but they're coloring the books. And even though it's overseen by Stan Sakai himself, I feel like the original black and white was the way that it was intended to be read, and that's why I went with this particular edition. So it is the story of Miyamoto Usagi, who is a ronin, a rabbit, an anthropomorphic rabbit. You know how much I love anthropomorphic animals, and it's not the only one on this list. And he is just going and traveling all over Japan, and it's his many adventures in feudal Japan and all the other animals he runs into. And it is heavily inspired by Akira Kurosawa movies, as well as Lone Wolf and Cub, the manga. So that's why it deserves a spot on the list. It is adventures, and it's weird because when people see this, they're like, oh, it's a cute little rabbit with a sword. How can the stories be so deep? But they are, and it's damn well worth your time to check them out. This is a series that got my attention last year, and I think also in 2019 was the year that I realized that Cullen Bunn is one of the hardest working comic book creators. I have no idea how he writes so many comic books every month. I think he writes more comic books every month than I read in a month's time, and I'm not exaggerating. And each one is unique in its own way, and I've learned to appreciate his horror stories so much more. And this damn book right here, this is Harrow County. It's the story of Emmy, who is a teenager that lives in Harrow County. And of course, there's supernatural elements, there's Southern folklore elements in here. And he is joined by Tyler Crook, who's, he uses watercolors in each page. It is like a painting come to life when you're looking at these books. They are beautifully drawn and beautifully crafted. And the story is so, I could not put down. There's 4 library editions, and that is the way that I suggest getting these. Now, there are trade paperbacks available of these stories, but I strongly suggest to get the library editions. Those are still in print because I think it showcases the artwork so much better than what trade paperbacks or single issues could do. But check out Harrow County. It's well worth your time. The greatest book that Frank Miller ever worked on. And I realize that is a strong statement to make, but to me, I believe that statement. This, to me, is better than Dark Knight Returns, his Daredevil run, 300, his run on Batman Year 1. I think that this is the best Frank Miller we've ever gotten. And the stories are the ones in here that inspired the movie. And I realize there's 2 movies, but we're not going to talk about that second one. But these are the stories that take place in Basin City. The stories of Dwight, Marv, the Yellow Bastard, Gel, and Miho, and Hardigan. And it is crime noir. It is just unfair, violent, and wonderfully drawn, all by Frank Miller. And like I said, it is his greatest creation, at least to me. And this is the Big Damn Sin City. It's an omnibus size and still available in print. There are also 2 box sets that collect the library editions, which you've seen the Hellboy library editions. But I think to me, this is it deserves to be read in oversized format to appreciate his amount of details and his art style that he changed up so much for this particular story. And a lot of other artists have tried to mimic as well. Big Damn Sin City, or just Sin City. Now with this book, I know I'm cheating a little bit because the rights are now over at Image, but there's no better representation to me of what I like to call Rick Remender's magnum opus. This is Fear Agent, and I think this is the perfect way to own this story. This is the library editions. There's 2 of them from Dark Horse. They're a little hard to find, but they're still out there if you manage to keep looking. It's my favorite Rick Remender story. Whenever I had to pick a Rick Remender story, this is the one that I go to. I think this is the one that he poured his heart and soul into making. Not just him, but also Tony Moore of Walking Dead fame and Jerome Opeña, who worked with him on, or is working with him in Seven to Eternity and did Uncanny X-Force with him. But pretty much it's just a quick synopsis. It's the story of Heath Houston, the main character right there, whose family is killed by an alien invasion. So he leaves Earth to become a fear agent. Not only is he a fear agent, but he's also a functional alcoholic. And in a fear agent, they go and eliminate alien races is what they end up doing. So this story has everything to at least me. It deals with loss and depression. It is adventures in space told in a pulp sci-fi comic style. It is the meaning of sacrifice. To say that I love this story is a complete understatement. And if you've not read it, I think you owe it to yourself to read it. As a comic book reader, as somebody that just appreciates a good story, or if you're a fan of Rick Remender and you haven't read this, at least get the trade paperbacks from Image, or you can read it digitally. But Fear Agent, hell yes. As we get down to the last 5, I just want to take this time to remind you to smash that like button and hit that notifications button to let you know when our videos are going live. We can be found on Redbubble, where you can get our logo on stickers and t-shirts. Now, let's continue. Now, this next book I would not even have checked out if it wasn't for my buddy Chris. Chris, shout out to you, man. My boy's working at DreamWorks Animation these days, but he's the one that went on and on about this book. Let me borrow the first 3 trade paperbacks, and I will say that after reading the first one, I was not impressed. I was like, I don't think this is for me. But the second one's the one that hooked me. I was finally able to appreciate what the Goon was. On the surface, it's a very simple story. It's an action-packed, I guess, adventure that pits our main hero, the Goon, here, with his buddy Frankie up against a horde of demons or things from the underworld. And that's pretty much it, but it's so much more than that. It's dark, it's violent, it's hilarious, it's wacky, it's in your face, and there's so many supernatural and horror elements that leave you craving for more. And when you're looking at the artwork, you can see that Powell borrows heavily from artists like Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, Jack Davis, and Wally Wood. But because of that weird little humor in the way that he draws his characters, it stands out on its own as a work of its own. Even like in the most darkest and controversial stories, it still gets me. So that's why the Goon made it in my top 10. There are a few times that I can think of in comic books that a spin-off has surpassed the original series. And this is one of those rare cases. I think, to me, and I know this probably sounds blasphemous, but I think there are times where BPRD, the spin-off of Hellboy, reads and just feels a lot better than Hellboy. And I don't know why that is. It could be due to the characters. You don't need to know much about the universe of Mike Mignola to enjoy these stories. All you need to know is just that Hellboy quit the BPRD. Now it's up to the other agents of the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense, like Abe Sapien, Liz Sherman, Lobster Johnson, and others to do and fill in his job. And much like Hellboy, they investigate myths and monsters and the supernatural. But in the end, it's really the main characters that you start to care about, whereas they were just little side or throw off characters in the Hellboy stories. In this, they take their time and focus on each one of those characters, and that's why I love them. That's why there's a Lobster Johnson spin-off series, and where's my Lobster Johnson omnibus? Come on, Dark Horse, make that happen. But BPRD is freaking awesome. Like I said, if you want to check it out, you don't need to read any of Hellboy. I mean, it helps, but this, for sure, it's an amazing series. Damn it, that's 2 Mignola series in my top 10, but I had to do it. Whenever I see the name Jeff Lemire, I automatically get excited. I'm like, oh man, I don't think that guy has ever written anything that has let me down. I'm not counting Extraordinary X-Men. That's another story. But this is a series that just came out, I think in 2016 is when it originally came out. And there's a reason why it has a library edition. There's a reason why it has many spin-offs. And we're getting more library editions at the end of the year. This is Black Hammer, and the world building that he does here is almost comparable to something like Hellboy with Mignola. It's great to see him borrow elements from superhero comics and horror comics and sci-fi pulp comics. This is a huge love letter to comic books as a whole. So pretty much it's these old superheroes from this world. They go through their own quote-unquote crisis-like event and now live on a mysterious farm where they're supposed to live out their days. And of course, that's not going to happen. They're going to end up busting out. And you have characters that are very much like Captain America, Martian Manhunter, Adam Strange, and Raven from the Titans. But I think the less I say about the book, the more enjoyable it will be for you. If you haven't checked it out, like I said, there's a couple library editions coming out later this year with the spin-offs and a volume 2 of this. It's phenomenal. And the artwork really matches the writing too. Dean Ormston, I think that's how you say his name, is a great artist that matches Jeff Lemire's writing style. I told you Usagi would not be the only anthropomorphic animal you would see on this list. And it's not like the concept is new, right? We've seen it for over a century about the stories of just anthropomorphic animals. Hell, Disney has cashed in on it so much that they've made a huge fortune on it. But this is not Disney. This is phenomenal Black Sad. And I'm so glad that Dark Horse brought it over to America. We've done an old reader, new reader on this. The artwork is just so gorgeous by Juan Guarnido. So it's written by Juan Diaz Canales and then drawn by Juanjo Guarnido and translated over here in America. It is mature, it is brutal, and it is a pure masterpiece, to say the least. You are introduced to John Blacksad, who happens to be a detective in America in the 1950s. And that will set the mood and the tone for the rest of the book. There's betrayal, there's crime syndicate, there's cover-ups, murder, sex. It's an amazing and beautifully done and crafted story. I cannot recommend this high enough if you've never read it. Please don't be turned off by the fact that it's a cat that smokes and looks ridiculous, because you are missing out on one of the best stories that you could read. And that's Black Sad. If you've been paying attention to my list, you've noticed supernatural elements, horror elements, sci-fi elements. So how could I not put this on the list? This is the EC Archives, now published by Dark Horse. EC was a 1950s comic book publishing company. They published things like Haunt of Fear, Vault of Horror, war comics, sci-fi comics. But my most favorite one, and probably because of the TV show on HBO I grew up watching, Tales from the Crypt. You have so much talent that went into this. Each one of these, by the way, hardcovers has 5 to 6 comics collected in there. And each of the comics is an anthology, a horror anthology, where if you're familiar with the idea of Tales from the Crypt, they're all very similar, but I can't put this down. This is by far, if you've been watching my channel for a long time, you know that this was going to be on the list. And originally published by EC, then Gemstone Publishing started publishing them back in the 80s to 90s. They lost the rights, and now Dark Horse owns the rights. And they've been putting them out for quite a number of years now. Hopefully they'll finish out the EC library collection. It'd be nice to have all these hardcovers. But yes, this is an amazing just anthology of horror elements, of people getting their comeuppance. And just, if you've never read it, it's some of the, not just best comics ever published, but some of the best work ever published to have touched paper. It deserves a spot in everybody's library, and that's why Tales from the Crypt from Dark Horse now is on this list. Now, if you're interested in purchasing most of these books, please check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for brand new graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off the cover price. Cheap Graphic Novels prides itself on packaging your books so they arrive safely and in excellent condition, as well as prompt and helpful service. And check out their bargain bin for even greater deals up to 90% off cover price. And for you minties, Cheap Graphic Novels is running a special promotion. If you're a first-time customer, let them know you were referred by Near Mint Condition at the checkout, and you'll receive a credit for free shipping on your next order. Now, this is only for U.S. customers. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discounts, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was my top 10 Dark Horse graphic novels. And as I mentioned on the show, some of these have been licensed somewhere else now. But to me, these versions, these Dark Horse editions, were the best way to collect these books. Leave those comments down below if you have a top 10, a top 5, top 3, whatever they are, of your favorite Dark Horse comics, your favorite Dark Horse collected edition. I would love to know those comments down below. If you have any more top 10 ideas, leave those comments down below. Again, thank you all so much for watching. Please don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button if you haven't subscribed yet. We put out videos every day. Don't forget to ring that bell for notifications when it lets you know when our videos are going live. And speaking of live, tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we are doing What's It So Bad? Was it really that bad? I don't remember what the segment is called. It's where Amanda and I go watch the lowest rated superhero movies. And I think tonight we're talking about the Incredible Hulk. So we let our viewers vote for that. And speaking of voting, if you want some perks as voting or early access to videos or behind the scenes footage, we have a Patreon. So think about joining our Patreon. That's that little button that appears at the end. And also all that information is in the description down below. More importantly, thank you all for watching. Please, all of you, stay healthy, stay safe, and much love to you all.